really interviewing some bright minds, and I could just tell you really got something special with the curiosity that you guys have. Is Don't lose that. You
Thank
can
you.
maintain it. I'm 38. I still got it, and to start at your, I wish I was as curious as you guys are, as smart as you guys are when I was your age. So good for you.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
So,
you.
welcome to the Holistic Kid Show. My name is Zane.
My name is Abdullah.
And my name's Imad.
So, we're the Holistic Kids here to educate us kids from the inside out.
Our world is suffering.
Agriculture is the most destructive human activity on the planet.
What's agriculture? That's a funny word.
Well, agriculture is actually the art and science of cultivating the soil, growing crops, and raising livestock.
How is that? So how is that bad?
Well, what is scary is that we actually dump 200 million tons of fertilizer globally every year. In our environment, we have actually lost half of our livestock species, 90% of edible plant species, 75% of pollinator species, and remember, they're disappearing at a rate of mass extinction. And what's crazier is that we are losing about 2 billion tons of topsoil a year. I mean, that's like 70% of our earth soils that's already been destroyed. Right, Zen?
Yeah. The UN told us that we only have 60 harvests left. Then what? What will humanity? No soil, no plants, no animals, no food, no humans.
Well, this should be another national emergency.
Oh no. Now what are we going to do about it?
Well, we definitely need to start telling more and more people about it. And so that's why today we are talking to an amazing director of a documentary we actually watched together when it first came out, The Need to Grow by Rob Herring. And Rob Herring is the co-founder of Earth, Conscious Life, and Tip News. He directed, produced, wrote The Need to Grow, which was an amazing documentary, by the way. Winner of multiple Best Documentary Awards and seen in 175 countries around the world. As a musician, Rob writes songs for health and eco-activism, and he is also a certified holistic health coach and is the co-founder of Integrative Pediatrics. So thank you so much, Dr. Rob, Mr. Rob. We are so honored for you to join us today.
Yeah, it is my pleasure. Thank you so much for your interest in this topic and for watching the film. Great to be here.
Well, it's our pleasure.
It's our pleasure.
So, what made you go into directing documentaries? We would love to know your story.
I used to be a little bit more in front of the camera. So I grew up as a performer. I can tell you guys maybe there's a little bit of a performer spirit in one or all of you. I used to do the plays and musicals, and I used to be a singer. And so I grew up, really seeking that type of future and crafting my skill sets as a performer, as an entertainer. And over time, I realized, maybe I could fuse my passion for these other topics. Like I really cared about being outdoors, connecting with nature. I cared about the animals, the wildlife. I cared about people's health. I was dealing with my own health challenges as a young man. And when I started to discover the connection of food and nutrition and health to the greater picture of the world at large, the environment, the wildlife, the ecosystems, I wondered, could I put some of these messages into music? So I started writing songs, and these were songs about things like agriculture, about farming, about bees, about all sorts of human health topics. And I found that it was a really powerful way to help transfer these ideas to people, because they might find that, with a funny song, maybe they would hear a new idea in a way where they might not pick up a book, or they might not want to watch a lecture or something like that, but maybe they would listen to this song. So I started making music videos and songs about these topics. And eventually I connected with a friend of mine who was a filmmaker. We made some scripted films that were, just the normal movies that you might see with, a scripted dialogue, a fiction, right? A fake story. And then I honed my skills as a filmmaker, and I said, I think I could try this in the documentary space. And with very little experience as a cameraman, me and my friend Ryan Wyrick, who I directed The Need to Grow with, we said, we could set up some interviews we're connected into this world of health and environmentalism. Let's try to show people the solutions that exist. And so when I was growing up, it was starting to become a little bit more negative of all the problems that exist in the world. And we were looking at the potential of the ecosystems collapsing, or the food system collapsing, as you guys were pointing out in the intro here. And it can get a little bit scary, get a little overwhelming when we think about, wait a minute, is food going to run out? Is soil going to run out? So we asked ourselves, can we focus on solutions? Can we make something that maybe will inspire people, inspire both children and adults alike to get a little bit more involved, that there is a way out of this? And so we started interviewing people, and what we quickly came upon was this topic of soil. And soil seems a little bit nerdy. A lot of people wouldn't really think about the soil under their feet. But as we got into it, we discovered all the complexities of the microbes that are happening in the soil. And if you remember from the film, that microbial life is really the key that separates it from what we would just call dirt. So we have dirt, which is the stuff maybe you just pick up on the ground, and it can be really dusty or just blow away in the wind. But the difference is when it becomes soil. And soil means that it has this life back into it. So it has these microbes. And this is the whole difference as to whether or not you could grow healthy food in it or not. So we set out on that journey, and we discovered a pretty interesting story. One of the stories is a young girl just about your age when she starts as an activist. And then there's this inventor guy, and then there's a farmer. And we thought if we told this story of solutions, maybe people would say, hey, you know what? I could get involved in this. I could participate in a regenerative or healthier future.
Yeah, and I think I think this might be one of the first episodes to actually talk about soil, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone always overlooks soil for the grass, for the nature, but no one actually realizes how important the soil really is and how beneficial it is to health as well.
Exactly. Yep. So the soil really is at the basis of almost all life on Earth. So other than the life in our oceans, and even that is all very interconnected, but anything on land, really, it comes back to the foundation of this soil life. So what are animals or humans going to eat, and does it originate from these soil nutrients? And when human beings were evolving 10,000 years ago, they started to create this concept called agriculture. Instead of just having to travel from one spot to the next, either hunting or picking berries or foraging, as we call it, they thought, you know what, if you stay in one place, we can actually just farm the land. And this was a new concept, of course, at the beginning of our human evolution. And when we stayed in one place, we were able to start to plant seeds. We were able to start to figure out, well, these crops grow together well, or if we can add water, we can get, a bigger crop. We can get some healthier food. And so through that agricultural history, what unfortunately ended up happening was that we were so focused on more. We got to get more. We got to get more, grow more. And the human population, of course, has expanded quite a bit, especially over the last few hundred years. And we've gotten to a point where the farmers are being pressured to just produce more and more quantity. And when you grow more and more quantity, you end up stripping those valuable nutrients from the soil. And then eventually you can't really grow healthy food out of it. And so you're able to grow some crops, but it doesn't have the nutrition that it once did. And so when we think of this model, we call it like extraction. We're just extracting nutrients. But we really want to shift our brains now to think about, how do we return something back to that soil? Otherwise, the soil runs out. And that's how we get to this dichotomy, or this fork in the road of one future where we just keep destroying our soils and pulling all the nutrients. It's like a bank account. You just keep pulling out of it until there's nothing left, or are we going to put something back in and reinvest? And so we can do this with different agricultural systems and composting and regenerating that soil.
And yeah, I think one of the biggest things about it is that a lot of people think that soil is kind of infinite. There's always gonna be. Come on, it's dirt. What's gonna happen to it? It's not gonna fly away or anything. And that's why I think your documentary really portrays the importance of why people need to focus on that. And I think mostly why kids need to pay attention to our farming practices, right? I mean, I think there was someone that
Yeah, there's a 6-year-old activist. I think she's 14 now. But it shows the importance of how kids should be involved early.
Yeah, the story of Alicia, who is in the film, is really, really powerful because she's someone that when we were making this film, we wanted to show an example where you have no excuses to not get involved because a 6-year-old girl who does not have access to that many resources is making real change in her community and beyond just because of her ambitious nature and her commitment, her persistence to an idea. And a lot of people thought maybe this was not really coming from her, or maybe her mom was kind of pulling the strings and making that happen. But Alicia, as a 6-year-old, really asked her mom, why are these Girl Scout cookies that we're selling through the Girl Scouts filled with all of these different ingredients and really high in sugar and with this ingredient called a genetically modified food, or what people call GMO, genetically modified organism. And when Alicia asked that question, she wanted to see if there was a way to make a cookie without the GMO, because she was learning about the negative effects that this GMO farming has on our wildlife, on the butterflies, the bees, also on human health. And so when she began this process, she started a petition, a simple petition online that anybody can make. And it just so happened that her story clicked with people and resonated, where she was getting tens of thousands of signatures on this petition. And it got national and potentially international awareness. And so she was really able to inspire different people to look at the way that they interact with their food system. She's since gone on to start seed box projects where people can start collecting and saving different seeds from their local area. And it's a topic we didn't get too deep into in the Need to Grow, but just like our soil is running out, the seeds diversity is unfortunately getting smaller and smaller. And so again, when we go back to that history of the farming, we had so many different plants around the world. And over time, we now know that, you might only see one variety of banana at the store, or you might only see a handful of apples, when in reality, there's thousands and thousands of different apples and carrots and broccoli and banana varieties that we're not used to, especially in Western culture. We don't really look for anything other than the ones that we know. So those seeds have unfortunately begun to get smaller and smaller. And so it's incredibly important to protect the seeds, save your seeds. And Alicia is also really inspiring people with that. So there's so many ways that you can get involved on a local level with your school system, start a seed library, and things like this.
Yeah, I remember you can also get creative with food, because like diversity and nutrition, it's really important. I mean, we were even surprised that carrots are found not orange, or they're not only orange, they're yellow, they're purple, they're also, they can be found as red, right? That was pretty interesting when we found those.
Yeah, what's cool about that is that each of those colors actually has a different nutritional profile.
They also taste
so
different.
yeah, it's this idea that we actually our eyes are able to tell us different nutrients through the color that they have. So really bright colored foods often have this compound called carotenoids, and it sounds like the word carrot. And it's just the carrot, or carotenoids is a compound that really helps a lot of our immune system health. It's really good for our eye health. It's good for our brain. And I think what's cool is that we might have evolved throughout nature to be able to say, hey, that's a blue food. I haven't had much of that in a while. Hey, wait a minute, there's a purple food. What nutrients are going to be there? And so the way that these colors show up is actually a really cool method for saying, you know what, we should probably eat the rainbow. Try to get some colorful foods in that salad, not just the green leaves, but can I spark it up with a little bit of yellow pepper or something like this? So yeah, there's so much more diversity, especially than we often find at the average grocery store.
Let's start with the basics. We are losing soil, but how is soil different from dirt?
Yeah, so soil is, I think, what nature really would want this dirt to be in if it was in optimal conditions. What happens is, as the life or those microbes, there's little tiny microscopic beings that we call microbes or microorganisms, and they're invisible to the naked eye. So if you picked up a handful of really rich soil, good soil that someone's been protecting or hasn't been over farmed, that soil in as little as a tablespoon will have billions and billions and billions of microorganisms. So there might be more little tiny microscopic critters in there than there are human beings on the planet in just a tablespoon. So that means that all of those little species are interacting in different ways. They're helping to make some of the nutrients more available so that when plant roots go down into them, those nutrients are actually able to be pulled up and create food, make it available for us to eat. And when those soil microbes get over harvested or over farmed, or they get dehydrated, right? The water is gone. Maybe it's too hot in an area because either the weather is changing, the weather is too extreme, or there isn't much of what we call a cover crop. So when soil is left bare, right, there's not even grasses or bushes or anything growing on it. What that means is that the sun is going to beat down on it really harsh, right? Imagine on a hot day, you want to go under a tree and get some shade. It'll cool you off. It can drop 10 or 20 degrees almost by going underneath a tree just to get shade. When that soil is not being covered, a lot of the water can evaporate. So it can dry out and it starts to become more like a desert. So when we imagine a really fertile area, or meaning something that has a lot of green, lush, like a rainforest, or even just a pasture of grass, but it's alive, it's green. And then you imagine the picture of a desert, it's all dried out. So that was once soil, believe it or not. Even these harsh deserts, in most cases, at some point through the Earth's history, were really rich soils. And so those regions, maybe not everywhere, depending on the temperature, but a lot of regions that actually are deserts can be regenerated. And when you see sometimes a side-by-side picture of people who did it the right way, you can see what it once was a desert, and then 5, 10, 20 years later, lush growth, trees, bushes, crops, flowers. And what's cool about that is what happens is the rest of nature returns when the soil returns. So when the soil comes back, you imagine initially we start getting some grasses comes out of that. Now imagine what happens is some other little tiny critters start to come back and say, ooh, there's a little food for me to eat, right? Maybe insects return. Then we start to see some butterflies return, the birds return, and then this whole food chain, the whole ecosystem, the circle of life starts to come back. And it builds and builds and builds upon itself until there's more and more diversity. So you can start to return hundreds to thousands of different species of bugs and insects and little critters and mice, etc. All can come back to an area that once had no life on it. So this is the really hopeful piece, is that we can actually regenerate.
So how do we regenerate, all of this soil? I mean, if dirt is basically dead soil, then I mean, I think it's more complicated than putting water on it, right?
Yep, yeah, exactly. Well, a cool way to think about it is to try to imagine a loop, and if you close the loop, and here's one of the loops that most of us leave open. Imagine you're preparing your food and you're cutting off the ends of those carrots. A lot of people just throw it into a trash. Maybe you've peeled a banana. What happens to the banana peel? A lot of people throw it in the trash. What happens? That trash bag gets tied up. We throw it in the can. The trash man comes and picks it up, takes it to the dump. It sits in a landfill. And in that landfill, that organic material is what we'll call it. These are the pieces of food that we're not using. Some people will call it waste, because if you're not using it, it just seems like waste. It seems like trash. That goes and that just rots away in the landfill. But it doesn't have to do that. Instead, those food scraps can actually become soil again. And if you've never participated in this, it's one of the best things that you can do, because it can happen really fast if you do it in certain ways. And so this is called composting.
Yeah.
So when we take that food scrap, we can do it with really no input at all. Like, the microbes are always there. Imagine you leave a loaf of bread or an apple out. Eventually, what happens? Stuff starts growing on it, right? Little mold starts coming on it, gets all funky. It smells bad to us. But what's happening is little microorganisms that we couldn't see with our eye start hopping on there and munching away. They want to just eat that. So they're decomposing it. So it's breaking it down. Now, in compost, we can do that in a controlled environment. Sometimes it's using worms. Sometimes it's using just other invisible microbes. And that food scrap will actually break down into new soil. And the very first time that you see that, and when you hold that up and you just had a pile of, the lettuce and whatever you threw in there, peaches and any kind of scraps that you had, and then especially if you use what's called vermiculture, which means worm meaning worm. This is like worm composting, believe it or not. The worms, right? Think about earthworms under the soil. Those are the people that are making the soil. Those little critters under there are the worms, right? So if you do this, if you do it, you can do it even inside. You could do it in a garage. You can do it in a backyard. It's a little container. And there's different websites you can check out to do worm composting. And when you drop some worms in there, they'll break it down in as little as a day or two. And you'll put your food scraps in, close the lid, open it up 2 days later. Nothing is there that you thought you put in. And instead you reach in and it's just living, rich soil. So this is really, really mineral rich, nutrient dense, and this is the type of fertilizer that we can use in our gardens and on our potted plants and things like that. So that's a direct way that you can do it on a small scale. And so this concept of composting you can do on a really big scale, and you can actually create new soil that way.
Wow, that's amazing.
That is amazing.
I mean, who thought worms could help save the earth?
They are called earthworms.
That's true.
So where do us kids start to help our earth?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the choices that we make when it comes to our food and where our food comes from, and starting to get a little bit more educated on the local gardens, the local farmers, how far the food traveled to get to your grocery store. These are really important ways that you can start to ask these questions. If you have a farmer's market in your neighborhood, that's really fun for kids, for the whole family to go, because they'll have other things there for you to interact with, but you also get to meet the local farmers. So you get to see the produce that they grow. You can ask them, are you doing it organically? Right? Organic means that they're not going to spray these chemicals and these pesticides and these fertilizers. And so organic means that it's going to be cleaner and safer to eat in the way that humans would have eaten for a really long time. So you want to get involved that way. You want to try to get a school garden going. Ask your teacher, hey, do we have a school garden? Can we get that going? Can we start a seed library at school? Can we start a composting bin at school or even in our backyard? So I think the kids really do hold the power, because a lot of times parents can be very busy, very overconsumed with other things, where they might not be willing or interested to put the time in. But if they see their child is curious and wants to start composting, wants to start growing even a little plant at home, hey, let's start to grow something at home. Can we get some seeds? Can we start a little garden? I think a lot of parents then are going to say, you know what, that's a really great idea. And all parents want their kids to eat healthy for the most part. They want them to eat their vegetables, right? A lot of kids don't always like to eat their vegetables, but one way that you can get kids excited to eat vegetables and healthy food is if they grow it themselves. And you can grow it even in a little pot at home, just right on the windowsill. So I think that's a great way for kids, is to say, hey, I've never grown anything. Can we grow our first plant at home, something edible? And then they're going to be really excited to eat it.
Yeah, we have our own garden garden.
And trees. We also have like apple trees, right?
Yeah, we have
An
apple trees,
an apple tree.
an
Sorry.
apple tree. We have mints. We have
Basil.
basil.
Nice.
We used to have a peach tree.
So you guys are doing it. You are living the example, participating in the solution, and you're showing, your listeners that this is something that can be done. You guys aren't. You didn't go and get a college degree in farming. You haven't been trained in depth on farming, but you can do this, right? And what's cool about those foods is they're actually more nutrient dense and healthy because the moment that you pick them, like that basil or that mint, if you were to get it at the store, that was picked days or weeks earlier. It starts to lose the aroma, the taste, and the nutrients. So when you pick that right off the plant and you throw that basil into a salad or whatever it is, you're actually going to get the most healing version of that basil because you're eating it within minutes or hours of it being picked.
So that is amazing. So where can people learn more about you and your work?
So The Need to Grow is the name of the film that we were talking about that you guys saw, and that film is still available for people to watch. So you can go to theneedtogrow.com. It's a solutions focused, family friendly film, great for all ages. We still have viewers all over the world and inspires people to do all the things that we were talking about, like composting or starting a garden. You can check that out. I also have an organization called Earth Conscious Life. Spelling of that is a little bit trickier, but it's earthconsciouslife.org. And that's a website and a newsletter where I reach hundreds of thousands of people around the world every week. And we get to share with them new ideas on nutrition and growing food or participating in their own health and environmental health. For me, I love the idea that our human health and our environment health are really the same thing. And most of those conversations and the solutions for human health also benefit the planet and vice versa. And it's a really cool idea that we can all participate in healing ourselves, our families, and the planet all at the same time.
You are so inspiring.
So inspiring.
So inspiring.
So everyone make sure to follow Dr. Rob on social media. Thank you so much, Mr. Rob. Let's recap Mr. Rob's key points.
Dirt is lifeless with limited nutrients to feed the plants, so needing tons of fertilizer and other chemicals to even cause food to grow. Soil is very different. Only 2 square centimeters of soil will have more microbial diversity than anything in the universe, and it also eliminates the need for chemicals. But with chemical and industrial farming, the loss of about a third of the soil in the last 150 years, unfortunately, the development of agriculture has led to the decrease of food diversity, leading to disease. That's why disease and everything, even though like all of the medicine is top notch, it's all the latest tech, people are still getting lots and lots of chronic inflammation, and there's still a lot of people are still suffering. Farmers today are actually pressured to grow more and more quantities. The current agricultural system works on extracting nutrients from the soil until there's nothing left. Microbial life is in the soil, and soil means it has the life back in it. And we need good soil for healthy food. In a tablespoon of soil, that has more microbes than people on the planet. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
It's like
Just got outnumbered.
8
That's
billion people on the
more
planet.
than
More
8
than 8,
billion.
yeah. Our human health and our environmental health are internet connected, and our land can be regenerated.
The rest of nature returns when soil returns. So us kids can regenerate this well. Instead of throwing away food scraps, composting it is very important to help regenerate the earth. You can compost today in a controlled environment. The food scraps will decompose into new soil. In our home, we try to never throw away food in trash. We compost it. It's really easy. The choices we kids start educating our bodies about our food are all important ways to help our earth. Farmers market, eating the rainbow, or real food. Eating organic food gets a school garden going. Start a seed library at school. Start a composting bin at home and at school. Start eating healthy food by growing at home. We have no excuses to not get involved. We can create change in our community and beyond. As long as we kids stay persistent, we can inspire others to look into their food and can take care of our earth, a home we all share too. We need to start taking care of it.
Thank you again, Mr. Ab. This was such a powerful discussion. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It was my honor to be on the Holistic Kids Show. I think you guys are so cool, and you really are the inspiration. So thank you for having me.
Well, like we like to say, it's our pleasure.
It's our
Our
pleasure.
pleasure.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Zansari.
Abdullah.
I'm Ahmad.
Follow Family 9 on social media, Holistic Momology, and look out for Mom's book. She is working on her 8th book right now, and the importance of eating real food and staying away from fake food. Kids need to learn from other kids. Please download our podcast and iTunes and leave reviews so other kids and families can benefit. We need to create a healthy future for all of us and the planet. Join us next week for another episode of the Holistic Kids Show, where kids are empowering kids. Thank you, everyone.